Mom, they said we have 24 hours to leave. Christy's daughter whispered it like a confession, not knowing the man behind the order once owed their family his life. Before we drive in, subscribe, share, and likes. Now. Christy Lawson wiped down the counter of her small diner for the 100th time, though it was already spotless. 6 years she'd run this place alone, ever since Marcus, her husband, died in the fire that took their first home. She'd rebuilt from nothing, brick by brick, order by order, so her daughter Nadia would never know what it felt like to be homeless again. Across town, in a penthouse office overlooking the harbor, Kangpae stood in silence as his men laid out property deeds across a glass table. 34 buildings, 34 families, all standing in the way of the syndicate's new development. He didn't ask questions anymore. He signed, he nodded, he moved on. That was survival, the only kind he'd ever known since the orphanage, since the streets, since he'd taught himself that mercy got you killed faster than a bullet. This block next, his second-in-command said, sliding a folder toward him. Corner diner included. Owner some single mother. No leverage, no lawyers. Kangpae didn't look up. 24 hours. Standard notice. That evening, Nadia burst through the diner's back door, breathless, a folded paper crumpled in her small fist. Mom, she said, voice trembling. They said, we have 24 hours to leave. Christy's hands went still on the counter. Somewhere across the city, a photograph sat forgotten in a drawer of Kangpae's childhood. A woman's face he hadn't let himself remember in 25 years. Neither of them knew yet how close their pasts already stood to colliding. Christy grabbed Nadia's hand and marched to the address stamped on the eviction notice, a glass tower she'd walked past 100 times, never once looking up. Security tried to stop her. She didn't care. I need to speak to whoever signed this, she said, slamming the paper on the front desk, voice shaking, but steady enough to be heard. Word moved fast. Minutes later, she stood in an office of cold marble and colder eyes. Kangpae sat behind his desk, pen still in hand, mid-signature on another family's ruin. He looked up. Something in his chest tightened, a flicker he hadn't felt in years. Her eyes. He knew those eyes. You have 6 buildings to spare, Christy said. Take one of those. Not mine. My daughter has never known a home that wasn't that diner. Business decisions aren't personal, Kangpae said, though his voice betrayed the smallest crack. Everything is personal when it's someone's home. Nadia stepped forward, small and fearless, clutching her mother's sleeve. Please, sir, we don't have anywhere else. Kangpae's jaw tightened. For one unbearable second, he saw another child in her place. Himself, 25 years ago, standing in the rain outside a shelter that turned him away. He said nothing. He simply looked down at the folder, at Christy's name typed in black ink, Lawson. His hand trembled almost imperceptibly. 24 hours stands, he said finally, forcing the words out like stones. I'm sorry. But as they walked out, he opened his desk drawer and stared at an old photograph he hadn't touched in decades. A woman's face, achingly familiar, standing beside a boy who no longer existed. Christy refused to pack a single box. We are not leaving, she told her staff, her voice hoarse from holding back tears all night. This diner is ours. I built it with my own hands after losing everything once. I won't lose it again. Her cook, Delia, gently touched her shoulder. Christy, these men don't play. You saw what happened to the Reyes family on 9th Street. I don't care. Across the city, Kangpae stood at his window, the photograph now sitting on his desk in plain view, something he hadn't allowed himself in years. His second-in-command, Jae-sung, noticed. Something wrong, boss? Push the timeline back, Kangpae said quietly. The diner. Give them a week. Jae-sung frowned. The chairman wants this finalized by Friday. Any delay looks like weakness. I said push it back. The tension in his voice silenced further argument, but Jae-sung's eyes lingered, suspicious, before he left the room. That night, 2 of Kangpae's men showed up at the diner anyway, not on his orders, but the chairman's, eager to prove loyalty by moving faster than instructed. They boarded the windows, cut the power, left a warning scrawled across the door in red paint. Nadia screamed when she saw it. Christy pulled her close, heart hammering, refusing to let her daughter see her cry. When Kangpae learned what had happened, something in him snapped. Quiet, cold fury replacing his usual detachment. "Who authorized this?" he demanded. No one answered. But for the first time in 25 years, Kangpae felt the ground shifting beneath feet he thought were made of stone. Kangpae arrived at the diner himself past midnight, alone, no guards, no warning. He found Christy sitting on the floor amid broken glass, Nadia asleep against her shoulder, both wrapped in a single blanket against the cold pouring through the shattered window. He froze in the doorway. "Get out," Christy said, not even looking up. "Haven't you done enough? I didn't order this. Doesn't matter whose hand held the can of paint. It's your name on the notice." Silence stretched between them, broken only by Nadia's soft breathing. Kangpae knelt, wordless, and began sweeping glass into a dustpan he found behind the counter. Christy watched him, stunned into stillness. "Why are you doing this?" she finally asked. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he pulled a battered folding chair upright and sat across from her, the weight of decades pressing on his shoulders. "There was a woman once," he said quietly. "She fed me when no one else would. I was 8. I never got the chance to thank her." Christy's breath caught, though she didn't yet understand why. Nadia stirred, blinking sleepily up at the stranger sitting near her mother. "Are you the bad man?" she asked, too tired for fear. Kangpae's throat tightened. "I don't know anymore," he admitted. Outside, headlights swept past, Jae-sung's car, slowing, watching, before continuing on. Kangpae didn't notice. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about the syndicate at all. He was thinking about a photograph, and a name he was suddenly terrified to ask. Quick question before we go further. Do you think Kangpae already suspects who Christy really is? Drop your guess in the comments. Kangpae returned the next morning with breakfast, an unfamiliar gesture that startled even himself. He set the bag down, and finally asked the question that had haunted him all night. "Your mother," he said carefully. "What was her name?" Christy stiffened. "Why does that matter?" "Please." "Eunice," she said slowly. "Eunice Lawson. She passed when I was 23. The photograph in Kangpae's coat pocket suddenly felt like it weighed 100 pounds. He pulled it out, hands unsteady, and placed it on the counter between them. Christy's breath left her body entirely. It was her mother, younger, in an apron stained with flour, standing beside a thin, hollow-eyed boy on the steps of a shelter that no longer existed. On the back, in her mother's unmistakable handwriting, "Feed the hungry ones first. Always." "She ran a soup kitchen," Kangpae said, voice breaking for the first time in 25 years. "I was starving, sleeping in stairwells. She found me, fed me every night for 2 months. No questions asked. When I finally worked up the courage to ask why she bothered, she said, 'Someone has to remember you're a person before they see you as a problem.'" Christy's hands trembled around the photograph. "She never told me this story. I looked for her for years after everything changed for me. By the time I had the power to find her, she was already gone." Kangpae looked up, eyes glassy. "And now here I am, about to take everything from her daughter." The weight of it settled over both of them like a held breath neither dared release. Something shifted after that morning. Kangpae came by daily, not as the man who signed eviction notices, but quietly, almost sheepishly, fixing what his men had broken. He replaced the window himself, badly, earning a rare, surprised laugh from Christy. "You're terrible at this," she said, watching him fumble with a caulking gun. "I run an empire. No one ever taught me manual labor." Clearly, Nadia, unbothered by his title or his past, had appointed herself his supervisor, correcting his technique with the confidence only a 7-year-old could carry. "You're doing it wrong. Mommy showed me how last time." Kangpae smiled, an expression so unfamiliar it startled his own face. In the evenings, after the diner closed, the three of them sometimes sat together over reheated dinner, and Kangpae found himself talking more in a week than he had in the past 5 years combined. He told her about the orphanage, the years on the street, The debt he'd carried like a second heartbeat for the woman who'd shown him mercy once, unasked. "You're not what I expected," Christy admitted one night, watching him help Nadia with homework at the counter. "Neither are you," he said quietly. For the first time since Marcus died, Christy let herself imagine a future that included someone else's hands helping carry the weight. It terrified her exactly as much as it comforted her. But peace, this fragile, rarely lasts. Somewhere across the city, Jae-sung had already compiled a full report, photographs, timestamps, everything, and placed it directly on the chairman's desk. The chairman summoned Kangpae without warning. "Explain this," he said, sliding the photographs across the table. Kangpae at the diner, laughing, carrying groceries, sitting beside a child that wasn't his. "It's handled," Kangpae said carefully. "It looks handled to you? You've delayed a $12 million development for a diner and a woman who means nothing to this organization. She means something to me." The chairman's expression darkened. "Then you've made your choice. Finish it by tomorrow, or I'll send men who won't hesitate. And I promise you, they will not be gentle." That night, Kangpae arrived at the diner hollow-eyed, unable to meet Christy's gaze. "What happened?" she asked, reading the dread on his face instantly. "You need to leave. Tonight. Take Nadia and go somewhere far. Somewhere they can't trace you." "Kangpae, what's going on? I can't protect you anymore," he said, voice breaking. "I never should have let myself believe I could rewrite 25 years of who I am for." He stopped himself. "For what?" Christy demanded, fear and fury colliding in her chest. "Say it." "For nothing. This was a mistake." The words landed like a slap. Christy stepped back, arms wrapped around Nadia protectively. "Get out," she whispered, tears burning her eyes. "I trusted you. I let my daughter trust you." Kangpae turned and walked into the night without another word, leaving both of them shaking. One from grief, the other from a terror he refused to let her see. Somewhere behind him, headlights idled at the corner, waiting. Kangpae sat alone in his penthouse office, the photograph of Eunice Lawson placed beside the chairman's final ultimatum. 2 lives, 2 debts. Only one could be honored. He thought of the stairwell where he'd nearly frozen to death. He thought of Eunice's voice, patient and unshaken. "Someone has to remember you're a person." He thought of Nadia's small hands guiding his on a caulking gun, unafraid of a man the entire underworld feared. Jae-sung entered quietly. "The men are ready to move at dawn. Cancel it." "Boss!" "I said cancel it." Kangpae stood, something resolute settling into his spine for the first time in years. "Get me everything we have on the chairman's illegal land acquisitions. Every falsified deed, every bribed official. Tonight." Across town, Christy sat awake with Nadia curled beside her, both of them afraid to sleep, afraid of every set of headlights that passed the boarded window. "Is he coming back?" Nadia whispered. Christy didn't answer because she didn't know. She only knew that mercy, once offered and then withdrawn, cuts deeper than mercy never given at all. She thought of her mother, feeding a hungry stranger without asking what it might cost her someday. She wondered if some kindnesses were meant to be repaid in ways no one could predict. At 3 a.m., a car pulled up outside the diner. Christy froze, pulling Nadia behind her instinctively. The door didn't open with force. It opened with a single, careful knock. Almost at the end, before the final act, "Tell me, do you think Kangpae chooses the family, or does loyalty to the syndicate win? Comment your prediction." Christy opened the door to find Kangpae standing there, exhausted, a thick folder in his hands and Jae-sung beside him, uncharacteristically silent. "I brought you something," Kangpae said. "The truth about the chairman, everything illegal he's built this empire on, enough to end him, and enough to protect this block permanently." "Why?" Christy asked, voice trembling. "Because your mother taught a starving boy that kindness isn't a transaction," he said. "I spent 25 years forgetting that lesson to survive. I won't forget it again." By sunrise, federal investigators Kangpae had quietly tipped off months earlier. Insurance he'd built without ever intending to use, moved on the chairman's operation. The syndicate crumbled from the inside, exposed by the very records meant to protect it. Kangpae walked out of that world entirely, trading empire for something he'd never let himself want: a quiet life, a diner on the corner, a little girl who still corrected his caulking technique. Weeks later, he stood in the same doorway where the eviction notice had once been posted, now replaced by a small brass plaque above the diner's entrance: Eunice's Kitchen, in memory of a woman who fed a hungry boy and never asked for anything back. 24 hours, Christy said softly, echoing the words that started everything, watching him hang string lights along the newly repaired window. That's all it took to change everything. Sometimes that's all it takes, Kangpae said, taking her hand. One door, one choice. Nadia grinned up at both of them. Does this mean you're staying forever? Kangpae looked at Christy, something unguarded finally settling in his eyes. If she'll have me. Christy smiled, the first full, unafraid smile in years. If this story moved you, let us know in the comments what part gripped you most. And stay subscribed, because next week's story might just be the one that breaks you completely.